Boxing fans are a fickle bunch. Up until a week ago, Jared Anderson was considered the heir apparent, a warrior ready to maraud through the heavyweight division and claim scalp after scalp and crown after crown. And fast forward a week, following a less than stellar performance against Charles Martin, and all of a sudden there are a lot of people saying this guy's overrated. He's a hype job. He's going to be slain sooner or later because the limitations are just too big. The fact of the matter is, the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. So we're going to get a little bit technical and get into why Jared Anderson was hurt on several occasions against Charles Martin, a fight that I myself expected him to look more dominant in. I actually thought he was going to get Charles Martin out of there earlier. You see, I don't think Charles Martin is a brilliant heavyweight, to be honest with you, and it's not me overreacting to the defeat at the hands of Anthony Joshua. I think there are some real limitations there. I think he's in the peripheries of the top 25. I think he's around that sort of region there. He's big, he's strong, he can land a nice solid backhand. He's a thinking heavyweight, which I like. He thinks about how to operate in there. He's got a lot of heart as well, so there are some good attributes there. And remember, to be top 25 in the world at what you do, you must know your way around the ring, right? This is not some guy who's a club fighter. But when you talk about the elite level, there are too many technical errors there. Firstly, pretty much every time he throws his backhand with real force behind it, his back foot comes off the floor and it swings around. And this might be a biomechanical issue. And the problem with this is that it, number one, affects your balance. And number two, it also stops you from coming off with a second phase of attack. So you throw the first backhand. If you miss, or if your opponent takes a step back or spins off to the side, by the time your foot lands and you readjust, it requires a reset, a moment to pause, and that prevents you from then continuing on with your attacks. The other problem that he has is that his hooking technique is not great, particularly to the body, so he's a fighter that prefers to keep it long. If he comes close and he gets you up on the ropes, as he did to Jared at the end of the fight, where he caught Jared with a good shot, and we'll talk about that later, he then couldn't really expand on it. He threw a couple of shots to the body, they weren't great technically. He had a few seconds there and Jared seemed to be in trouble and he couldn't capitalize. Now, in terms of him swinging that back leg off the floor, that's actually how he got knocked down, because he threw this backhand which actually caught Jared. Jared dipped down, it clipped him on the top of the head, sort of just above the temple, which if you ask Anthony Joshua, he'll tell you after that Ruiz punch, that can really discombobulate you. But he also, as he's dipped down, he's thrown this looping over the top right hand from a southpaw stance, and he managed to catch Martin, who was standing on one leg, and ended up falling on the floor. He was up at a count of one. He wasn't hurt, but it was a balance issue. And I just felt he would make too many of these technical errors for a guy like Jared Anderson, who's got a lot of agility in those hips and is able to pull back and counter. And when he gets that right, that lean back counter, it's a thing of beauty, right? When he gets it right, we'll talk about it in a moment. But with the attributes that he's got and his ability to put his hands together, and when he does get a guy hurt, he really lets his hands go. Look at the Jerry Forrest fight as an example. I just felt that he would be able to get Charles Martin out of there early, but it didn't play out like that. Martin got on the back foot and he was waiting for Jared to be overcommitting, and Jared has some problems with his feet and also with his stance when he's on the inside. So let's talk about what causes Jared some problems, because potentially he's an accident waiting to happen. There's a flip side to that coin though, and that is that for every limitation a fighter's got, some of them are problems that you cannot iron out. Let's say somebody's got a glass chin, for instance. Yeah, you can try and improve his defense to protect the chin. You can try and add some strength to his neck to stop like a whiplash effect when he's getting caught with big shots, to try and make him more durable. But ultimately, if the chin's a problem, it's a problem. It's always going to be a problem at the elite level. With Jared's limitations, they're actually technical limitations that I think he can rectify. So let's talk a little bit about them. One of the problems that he has is his footwork. When he's walking a guy down in particular, you'll see that he'll often hop forward and he'll bring one foot closer to the other. Now this causes a lot of problems because, number one, when your feet are close together, if you get caught in that moment, you're off balance. Number two, if you don't get caught and you're just out of range, because sometimes he'll do it when he's just on the edge of range, when you then have to step into range, directly into range, and your feet are together, you know, the opponent knows it's your front foot that's going to come forward next. It's the only way you can go. Your feet are next to each other. So as you go to step forward, before that lead foot lands on the floor, he can throw a punch. And in that moment, you're in no man's land because you're standing on one leg, on that back leg. And because he's got these great reflexes and this agility in the lower back, when he is going to see a shot coming quickly, he'll quickly lean back. And that's his first method of defense. The problem is, because he doesn't often have his feet below him in that way, or he can be a little bit too flat-footed when he is set, he's not prepared to take a half step back or change the angle. Because of that, his initial instinct is to quickly lean back. And if he's got time, he's going to come back forward. If he's got his weight beneath him and he hasn't overly leant back, he'll come back with a power shot of his own. If he's distributed his weight too far back, he can't then come back with a shot of his own, and that requires a reset of its own too. And so with a second phase of attack, when you've got length and you're punching through the target, or even if you close the range and then come off with that second phase of attack, because he's leant so far back, there's no way for him to reset until he pulls himself back up. And that's when he can be getting caught. Firstly, let's start off with Charles Martin. Look at the way he always gets his back foot off the floor when he throws that backhand, and it just makes him lose positioning all the time. And from there, look, there's no second phase of attack that's possible. So the areas that could potentially give Jared some real problems here, Charles Martin just isn't capable of doing it. He's not shifting with that back foot to change the stance and really get at Jared or anything like that. He just loses his construct. Now, moving on from that, let's go on to Jared Anderson and actually look at some of the issues that pertain to him. First and foremost, let's look at the way his feet just move together. Look at that position in there. From here, what can he do? If Charles Martin was actually in a position where he was to let go of an attack here, what is Anderson going to do? He has to readjust his feet. That foot needs to move somewhere for him to readjust. He's not in a position to defend himself. And if he does get caught before he's set, he can end up hitting the canvas because of a poor balance. And even there, as he steps over, look at the way that back foot has come beyond the lead foot, the heel of that back foot. So again, from this position, he's not in an area where he can really operate by opening out his body here until that foot's landed. So he's just given an exit to Charles Martin. He's not cutting off the ring effectively at all. Now this goes back to what I was saying as well about the second extension of the foot. Look at his feet, how together they are. Look at that positioning. It's funny. It actually looks funny to look at. As he steps forward from this position, look at that lead foot. Just as it's about to fully land, he'll further extend it. There. He slid to further extend it in order to be able to get that back shot off. And look how much his legs have widened. He's almost like he's doing the splits to bring that backhand into play. And from that position, while it's able to throw it, he's not able to do anything other than throw it. So there's not much on it because you're not punching through the target as Charles Martin steps back. And then you have to reset. You can't go again with a second phase of attack. Although he's not working an entry here really, he is aware that Charles Martin has read what he's trying to do. So now, as he's trying to place that lead foot forward and Martin's looking to time that, he's aware and he starts to take these little hop steps back. Even though he's not in a position to punch, watch what happens in this sequence. So there's the foot that lands and immediately Martin reacts. So straight away, he shifted his weight onto that front foot to hop back. Martin realizes I'm going to fall short, so doesn't throw at all. Again, the feet come together, and as you see, just as he was about to launch again, Martin, he shoots off of that front foot to create separation again. In other words, it's a defensive maneuver to get out of range. Now, there's nothing wrong with that because he's actually applying some foot pressure here. He's getting Martin to react to micro movements. This is not the biggest of deals. It's fine. He's offering a threat, which could be providing mental exertion for Charles Martin. But watch how this plays out. So he brings his feet back close together. He's not in a position again here where he can punch. Charles Martin knows that if he's going to attack me at any point, this stance needs to change. The moment that that lead foot comes back in here, Charles Martin is aware that there's a potential that Jared will attack. So what does Charles do? He throws a throwaway stab jab to the body. That was just a bid to try and get Jared Anderson to do something, to react. From that wider stance, he kicks off, and Martin this time is able to read that, slip it, come back with a backhand of his own. And that entire sequence came about because his feet were initially too close together. Then he had to overextend eventually to overcompensate. And his linear single attack, the pattern that he provided, was able to be read and countered. You see, you've got to look at boxing like you're an engineer. There's a process involved. Why is what is happening? Only then can you start to understand how to beat a fighter and how to eradicate limitations so that you can make yourself less beatable. So as he was trying to think his way in, he still got caught because of the error that he was making. And then in that sequence, you see how when the lean back works for him. If his feet are already planted and you're going to throw a shot, he'll lean back and counter you. So he has to have his feet below him. At the start of this sequence, again, his feet are in a terrible position. He opens up, brings them back together, opens up again, brings them back together. He keeps hopping, bringing his feet close together. He's not shifting his feet in the proper manner to enable him to get close to Charles Martin. He can't speed up his feet without him hopping and then requiring a reset. But from there, like we said, the front foot barely lands on the canvas before he's going to shoot off. And in this position, where he lands, he actually gets himself into a decent area because it looks like he's got his lead foot on the outside of Martin's lead foot. So whilst Martin is trying to escape, this kind of cuts off that trajectory. And from there, with that little hop off the back foot, he's closed the range and put himself in a very good position because he's lined up that backhand with the centre line of Charles Martin. This could be a devastating backhand if he really punches through it. Instead, he misses. But because of that extra hop and that overextension to try and close the range, by missing, he can't get off that second phase of attack. There's no left hook that can follow. Martin is able to step away and get into a fairly safe position. Now, the final two sequences that I want to show you, again, his feet are too square on, too close together. As he goes to step in, Martin throws the jab. Now, from this position, look how low that Jared Martin gets when he's leading back. Look at that position. It's almost like he's trying to do a limbo dance, right? From here, if Charles Martin throws that backhand, where's Jared Anderson going to go? But Charles Martin's thinking too defensively and he's not following through with the second phase of attack. But if we let this play on, look at this next clip. Here are his feet too close together. The other foot was just behind, to be fair, and he's shifting from a orthodox stance to a southpaw stance, and without actually engaging Martin, so he's not trying to distract him with a punch or anything like that. He's just walking into range, and as he does that, he instantly has to react because the jab's coming in. And how does he react? He reacts by bringing that back leg back, and he's trying to lean back. But because he's unable to get out of the way quickly enough, and this time a second phase of attack does come from Charles Martin, he lands flush. And when he's landed, because he's pulling out, his feet are actually square when it lands, and he's hurt here. His legs do a little bobbly dance. He's all over the place. Then a little touch to the ribs from Martin, a little left hook. He's able to survive. And the start of this sequence, actually, look at him. It's like he's clicking his heels together like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. He's just standing upright. The minute he steps forward, Charles Martin lets go. Bang. And look how far back he gets again, almost like he's in limbo. There's nothing he can do from there. Here, the same thing happens again. What is he going to do from that position? Nothing, because his weight's been shifted too far back. Now here's an example when he's actually got his feet below him, but he's at mid-range inside the pocket. He doesn't stand tall but seeks to tie up like Vladimir Klitschko would do. He's not sitting there trying to roll with shots the way Tyson Fury likes to do when he's standing tall in the pocket. He's not getting small and deflecting shots off the shoulder like a Riddick Bowe. He throws a shot and pulls back there. You see how he pulled back and threw another shot, and then he gets caught with a left hook. This next sequence with Forrest, he parries the initial shot, comes with his left hand. From here, he can throw the right hand, and by throwing the right hand, he can get his head off the line towards his left hand to get his head off of the line. Instead, he stands upright again, and he's flat-footed, and he eats a big shot, and he falls back, and he resets, and he throws a jab, and from there, again, what is his go-to position? To pull back and try and parry the shot, and he does get away with it, but you're not always going to get away with it in those situations. You can't be getting caught flush like that against these top level heavyweights on a consistent basis. Eventually you are going to get cleaned out. In summary, make no mistake, Jared Anderson has some limitations, but they're limitations that can be worked on. This is nothing that sort of puts this red warning sign above him to say this guy's never going to make it. He's got limitations, but they can be fixed. He's got some fantastic physical attributes, a great athlete, brilliant agility, puts his hands together very, very well. He's got good killer instinct when he's got an opponent hurt. So there's an awful lot there to like about Jared Anderson, and the ceiling is absolutely massive. In fact, there's another fantastic prospect who has similar technical limitations to Jared in terms of him bringing his feet together, then having to overextend and overcompensate in order to close that range. And he's limited sometimes to a linear single attack, which enables the opponent to come off at the sides and potentially come back at him. And he can be touched a little bit too. And that's Jaron Boots Ennis. Now, it's potentially a bigger problem for Jared because a heavyweight's more likely to clean you out than a welterweight, right? But make no mistake, there are some punches in the welterweight division too. You've got Conor Benn in there, you've got Virgil Ortiz in there, you've got Terence Crawford in there. So these are areas where Jaron Boots Ennis is going to want to fix too. But they're areas that can be fixed. I know a lot of you have been calling for a Makhmudov fight after the weekend. Look, Makhmudov is a little bit stiff in the back, there's no doubt about it, but he's adaptable and he's a good technical boxer. And you saw at the weekend, he was fighting a guy who was 15-0 with 14 knockouts, and he didn't allow him to settle at all. He wasn't going to have his technical boxing match whereby this guy's going to start swinging for the fences, and you never know, he might be athletic to knock out 14 of his 15, even though he hadn't fought anyone. If he lands on Makhmudov's chin, who knows what could happen. So Makhmudov came straight at him, letting go of bombs instantly. And he was able to come in close, and when the guy would try and tie him up, you'd see that he'd come underneath the guard, he'd sort of go under and over and then mix it in with a left hook. That ability to roughhouse and have those short power tactics, combined with the fact that he's able to also box, makes him a very dangerous guy. So for now, if I'm Jared Anderson, I'm staying away from Makhmudov. Get him in there with the top Carlos Takam, a guy who reminds me a little bit of Derevianchenko. He can keep himself small, and he's somebody as well that can be lateral in his movement, getting you resetting and surprise you. So that's a good guy that you can work against when you're up close, change your levels, work on your footwork. Another potential is Michael Hunter, because he's very good at that second phase of attack. That Raiden style that brings in that lineal entry followed by that second lineal approach after that first one. He'll come in and then further go inside and try and push you back. So it'll be interesting to see how Jared handles that. And because Takam is in the latter stages of his career and Michael Hunter's been very inactive too, Jared would be a hot favourite. And so it's unlikely that you're going to derail him, and yet he can learn a lot from those fights and he can improve. But there's enough threat from those guys to make it interesting. That's where I would go with Jared Anderson from here. Let me know what you think. Who do you want to see him fight next? Since we've mentioned Makhmudov, let me know what you think about him too and a potential future opponent for him. Thanks for watching, ladies and gents. Don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.